Seeking to distance themselves from the growing hostility of Numenor, the elves of the Undying Lands stopped visiting the island kingdom, which became more greedy and prideful under the reign of Tar-Kiriatan's son, Tar-Atanamir the Great, who inherited the scepter in 2029 SA, becoming the first king since Tar-Miniatur to rule until his death in 2221, refusing to abdicate in his elder years. Succeeded by his son Tar-Ankalimon, the men of Numenor started to fracture and turn against each other, a divide most evident in their migration to the colonies, as the king's men, loyal to their imperialist policies, populated Umbar, while those who remained faithful to Eru, the Valar, and the elves founded the city of Pelargir. After the death of Tar-Ankalimon in 2386, his son Tar-Telemaite inherited the scepter, followed by the new king's daughter, Tar-Vanimelde, in 2526. Yet the queen had no interest in the administrative duties of her position, and so left her husband, Herukalmo, as regent to rule in her stead. Upon her passing in 2637, the scepter should have gone to her son and heir, but Herukalmo refused to surrender power and usurped the throne, ruling under the name Tar-Andukal until his death 20 years later. Nevertheless, historians did not consider him an official king, and so the next true ruler was his son, Tar-Alkarin, who reigned until 2737, when his own heir, Tar-Kalmakil, took the throne. Continuing to depart from ancient traditions, Tar-Kalmakil was the first king to record his name in both the Quenya language of the elves and their own Adunaik, calling himself Ar-Belzagar. In 2825, the king's heir, Tar-Ardamin, also called Ar-Abadarik, came into power, ruling until 2899, when his son inherited the scepter. Seeking to end the ancient tradition of taking a Quenya name, Tar-Ardamin's son was solely known as Ar-Adunakor, meaning Lord of the West, an insult directed towards Manwe, king of the Valar, who shared the title. Under his rule, relations with the elder children worsened significantly, as Quenya was forbidden in his presence, while only the faithful, led by the lords of Andunye, retained any contact with the elves. After the death of Ar-Adunakor, his heir Ar-Zimrathon inherited the scepter in 2962, followed by his son Ar-Sakalthor in 3033 and Ar-Gimilzor in 3102. Throughout these years, the Kingsmen faction grew so influential that by the reign of Ar-Gimilzor, all elven languages were banned from Numenor, while spies were sent to watch over the faithful, who refused to follow suit with the Kingsmen faction, continuing to worship Eru and respect the Valar. When Gimilzor learned that the faithful were using the port city of Andunye to remain in secret contact with the elves of Tol Eressëa, they were forcibly moved to the other side of the island, leading many to leave Numenor entirely, migrating to Pelargir in Middle-earth. As Ar-Gimilzor was also the first Dunedain king to abandon the yearly pilgrimages to the mountain Meneltarma and neglect the white tree Nimloth in Armenelos. Unhappy in his marriage, Ar-Gimilzor married the noble lady Inzilbeth, who was secretly one of the faithful and so did not agree with her husband's actions and views. Their firstborn son, Inziladun, took after his mother and became one of the faithful, while their second child, Gimilkad, was like his father and became a leader of the Kingsmen. Though Ar-Gimilzor wanted Gimilkad to succeed him, he was unable to change the laws of succession, and so when he died in 3177, his firstborn child inherited the scepter and immediately set to work, reversing the corruption which plagued their people. Among the many changes he implemented, he took the Quenya name Tar-Palantir, tended to the tree Nimloth, stopped persecuting the faithful, and made pilgrimages to Meneltarma in reverence of Eru. Yet after centuries of departure from these ancient traditions, the people were unwilling to follow his example, leading many to seek out his brother Gimilkad and the Kingsmen faction. Disheartened by this rebellion, Tar-Palantir largely withdrew from public life, spending his time gazing upon the waters of the West, in the hopes of seeing a sign from the Valar which never came. Though Tar-Palantir died in 3255, his reforms might have continued under his daughter and heir, Midiel, who was raised as one of the faithful. However, she lacked popular support, and so her cousin, the son of Gimilkad, staged a coup and forcibly married her to become Ar-Pharazon, last ruler of Numenor, who ended the reforms of his predecessor and reigned at the height of their power. Meanwhile, in the lands of Middle-earth, the Dark Lord recovered from his defeat in the War of the Elves and Sauron, growing more powerful than ever by expanding his influence in the east and south. Inheriting the legacy of his ancient master, Sauron sought support from those who previously served Melkor, encouraging them to see the first Dark Lord as a god, so he could be viewed as a divine emissary. Arrogant in his power, Sauron underestimated the strength of the Dunedain, and once again attempted to conquer the West, attacking Numenorian colonies. A tireless enemy of the Second Dark Lord, Ar-Pharazon gained fame, prestige, and wealth in his youth from his battles against the armies of Mordor. Yet Sauron did not fear Ar-Pharazon, and so after sending his forces to conquer the West, gave insult to the Numenorian ruler by appointing himself the King of Men. Outraged by this proclamation, Ar-Pharazon spent several years preparing a mighty host to descend upon the east, determined to dethrone his enemy and take the title as his own. Gathering an overwhelming force, the Numenorians docked in the port of Umbar, striking such fear into the Dark Lord's forces they deserted and fled, allowing Ar-Pharazon to march upon Mordor and call for Sauron to humble himself and swear fealty to the true King of Men. Realizing he greatly underestimated their power, the Dark Lord knew he was defeated in the short term, but also saw this as a unique opportunity to secure victory in the long term, and so devised a new plan to destroy his enemies from within. Taking fair form, Sauron presented himself before Ar-Pharazon and bent the knee, accepting his defeat in words deemed fair and wise. Yet the king was unconvinced that Sauron would truly abide by his oath, and so stripped him of all lands and titles, before taking him as a prisoner to Numenor, so he could ensure the Dark Lord no longer posed a threat. Though Sauron acted disheartened by this decision, in truth he was content, as this was exactly what he wanted. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Lionel Storm, the Warhammer of Lightning, Zong the Black Wolf, Z Packwood, and Ivan the Crowblade. If you'd like to help the channel, you can sign up for membership through the YouTube join button, buy merchandise from the store page, or else go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can get early access to videos, vote on future content, and access the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.